All right, in this episode, we talk about the pull down phase
and how to pitch with a torn UCL.
All right, Brent Porcio, Stephen go down here at the @TopVelocity hashtag Pitcher Tips show. We're going to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram @TopVelocity hashtag Pitcher Tips. Ask your question, we answer it on the show. Don't forget about baseball tips. You want to talk baseball tips, answer on the show. Snapchat also will answer your questions. If we've missed your question on some, we typically, I'm really big on hitting Twitter. I like Twitter, but if if you've put it somewhere else, just go and post it on Twitter as well. If I've missed it, and that'll help. But yeah, so let's see what the first question is for today. Dakota asks, can you explain the pull down phase? All right, good question. I like this question because there's an approach out there that talks about a pull down phase. And when I think pull down, I think you're grabbing something and pulling down. So I think from the wrist down is what's occurring. So I'm grabbing the ball and pulling it down. To me, that's a great mistake. I've had to make that adjustment because it was a last resort. I always pay the price, fries my flexor mass. It's very overbody, or very arm dominant. It's an overcompensation mistake. So I think it's horrible. It's not a good, efficient, effective approach to pitching performance, to ball speed, to arm health, and I'll tell you why. Because energy moves from the ground up, and the energy releases at the end. We would never want to pull against that force. We do want to hold on. So like in centrifugal force, if something's flying around me, the speeds farther away from me have a greater force, have more G's, right? So you have to keep it going, if you have to hold on, like you have to hold on to the ball, if I had to grip that object, that is important to not allowing the object to fly off as it goes through that angular velocity and to get it to release. But there should never be a point where the arm is actually pulling down, adducting down, or trying to force internal rotation, things like that, because that's the part of the delivery where things are releasing. They shouldn't be acting. It should be a reaction, not an action at that point. So pull down doesn't occur. I think we get confused because when if we're throwing in some approaches, if you're throwing a distance, you typically are releasing earlier, and then you do a pull down phase because you're shorting the distance, and if you keep releasing earlier, you're going to keep launching those farther distance. So you think pull down, and all it really is quicker internal rotation, really more internal rotation, or a later release point. So there is a grip to that. We need a grip on harder, but there's no pull down. It's just a more dynamic, explosive release. And that's why when I hear pull down, to me, that should be better front leg force production, because that's what creates a quicker, faster, more efficient release point where the ball is lower in the zone. So think about it, if energy comes up the chain, if I put more force in the front leg extension, that pushes more force up the chain. If it's linear, it'll abduct the hip. The hip abduction will push the trunk in more forward tilt, which the arm will react to that and turn over faster because it's rotating, and the trunk is pushing it more forward into that rotation, and then that arm will turn over, pronate earlier, and create that effect of pulling down. Problem is most guys, when they hear pull down, they're actually going to pull their arms down. They're going to adduct their arm into release, which pushes the elbow out in front of the face, which overloads the elbow in what's called the internal rotation moment, which is where most damage is done, and pushes it in front of the face and puts it in a more compromised position to delay pronation, where the arm releases stress on the elbow. So it would be really bad to actually think pull down if you're throwing hard, because it would put more torques in the arm. It creates that overcompensation. So when you hear pull down, tell yourself it's not really a pull down, it's actually more front leg force production, more extension in the front leg, therefore creating a more explosive trunk tilt, which will then at release turn the arm over into more internal rotation, actually increasing speeds and getting the ball lower in the zone. Pulling the arm down into adduction will actually reduce speeds while it exaggerates torques in the arms, and it won't put the ball down really in the zone. It might still float the ball in the zone. So you'll lose speed as you try to get the ball down in the zone. We want to gain speeds as we get the ball down the zone. So if I can show it here, this would be, as you go through your arm path, this would be pulling down, you know, to release. And this would be using the front leg force production to get more of that pull down or quicker internal rotation. I'd stick the front leg, and it ducks my hip, it launches my arm forward, my trunk forward, which would then want to internally rotate, pronate my arm quicker, creating a more efficient kinetic chain, natural effect to the pull down. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, like pretty much what Brent's saying, when I'm thinking of pull down, I'm thinking of guys doing the long tossing, and then they go through their pull down phase where they start bringing it back in, trying to keep it on a line. But I don't really think that that's teaching you how to use linear power and counter rotation to load the arm, use the kinetic chain, and create proper mechanics. Pretty much is what I'm trying to say. So, if you're doing that and you're not teaching yourself how to use the kinetic chain by creating power from the lower half and really counter rotating to get this arm to load up, and then stabilizing that energy with the front leg and launching everything forward, creating that catapult-like effect. I think that the pull down, like he's saying, it can be really harmful on the arm, and it's just not teaching you that linear power with the rotational complement, quoting the great Adam Garcia.
Yes, good. Next question. Scott Roberts asks, how did you continue to pitch with the partially torn UCL? Wasn't me, I tore my rotator cuff. Kevin, when he was in college, completely ripped his UCL off. So I know the experience of working with Kevin, who had no UCL. And what you typically see is guys, they lock down their flexor mass more because they're having to stabilize the joint without the UCL, and they don't externally rotate as much because of that. So basically what you'd have to do if you're not gonna have surgery, or the doctor says it's just partially torn, let's just try to rehab it, is you're gonna have to get your flexor mass, your bis and tris, all this really strong enough to stabilize the joint for the amount of torque you're gonna put on it. So it's really, really strong. You're also gonna have to do, like we say, go into good lower half approach, build a lot of lower half power, good hip to shoulder separation. You're gonna have to do things technically to remove all the loads to the arm, which we have that Kibler and Chandler study that calculated 20% decrease in kinetic energy from the hip and trunk delivered to the arm requires a 34% increase. So if we can do the opposite and actually double the energy coming up, it will significantly reduce the energy we have to create in the arm. So that will reduce torques, and now we're stronger to handle that. That's how you would pitch with a partially torn UCL. I mean, it sucks you're there, I feel bad you're there, but if you are, you just have to get technically more efficient with a ground up approach, and you have to get stronger and more explosive in your lower half, stronger in your joints, to be able to handle the torques and loads, and you should be fine. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just building up the powerful athlete, then learning the kinetic chain and getting it to where you can load that arm, really use the whole body to create the power, and once you get it down, you should be able to really not feel your arm even when you do it. So that will significantly take stress off the arm, and you'll be good to go.
Good question. All right. If you have a question, go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at TopVelocity, hashtag pitching tips. It's hashtag baseball tips. Ask your question. We answer it on the show. We'll see you at the ABCA convention in Nashville, January 7th through 10th. Come to the booth. We're with the King of the Hill. Also, go check out TopVelocity.net. Learn about 3X programs, 2X programs, which is pitchers, position players, throwing velocity. Even gets into 60s for the position players. It's also the training. It's going to help with bat power, bat speed, and come down to 3X velocity camps. And we'll see you soon. And I'll see you on the next episode.
Hold on, we them boys. Peace.